Well, week one is in the books, and we had a pretty interesting week. We had quite a few blowouts, though. Really only one game that was, well, maybe two games that were relatively close. The other ones were pretty much done in convincing fashion. The big shocker of the night, in my opinion, was Du-Pec's 58-7 win over Amboy, which is really surprising considering the fact that just last year Du-Pec had scored 84 points throughout the entire season. In one game they put up 58 points. Outside of that, with Lena Winslow's big win over EPC, a lot of people were surprised by that. I wasn't so much surprised by that one, as Lena Winslow rolled 50-6. And then the big showdown was Dakota and Forreston and Orangeville and Aquin. Both those kind of went to par, with Forreston winning 30-12. Obviously, Dakota had some things that they could have done differently in that game, but overall, it was relatively sloppy. I felt that Forreston pretty much controlled that game from the onset, took care of business as usual, provided had they not had so many turnovers. But on the other hand, if Dakota could punch it in inside the red zone, you have many different facets of a ball game there. And then Orangeville and Aquin just straight up taking it to Orangeville. It was a close game, 7-0 at the half. In the second half, Aquin started to make things happen. Orangeville was trying to hold on, claw back. Aquin ended up prevailing 28-16. So, we move forward and we look into this week. We got quite a few interesting matchups. I wouldn't say there's any big-time shows. Probably one, and that would be our game of the week, which is going to be Stockton and Aquin, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But, you know, you got Dakota going to West Carroll. Another interesting one is Du-Pec at EPC. And, you know, you kind of want to know, what is West Carroll, what is Galena, and of course, can Du-Pec hang with EPC? Obviously, Galena going to Forreston isn't really going to tell us a whole much this week, but it'll be interesting to see nonetheless. And, you know, quite a good set of games here going into week two. So we'll take a look at these games right now. First game we're going to cover is Dakota at West Carroll. Dakota comes in with an 0-1 record after they lost to Forreston 30-12. And West Carroll comes in with a 1-0 record after they came back to beat Galena 22-20. And last year these two teams squared off in week 6, where Dakota won that matchup 34-12. Last year it was a pretty hard fought battle. It seemed like the game could have went in different directions until Dakota took control late in that game. This year, obviously, you have a little bit different look. Obviously, Dakota coming off of a game against Forreston, in which, in my opinion, you know, Forreston felt like they were very much in control from the onset of that game. But Dakota also had plenty of opportunities that they end up missing on. And then West Carroll, of course, had a game that, you know, they led for a little bit, and then Galena took control in the third quarter, and then West Carroll had to come back in the fourth quarter and win that game. I don't know how well these two teams are going to play out this year.
No, that's definitely going to be really interesting. But you kind of brought up, and I know we brought it up in the intro, the Forreston Dakota game was pretty floppy. I know at one point we joked that it was almost like a bakery with all the turnovers. But how can Dakota, like, they have a lot. They have a lot there, and Forreston is a formidable opponent. That's undeniable.
Right.
But I do believe Dakota left quite a bit out there. How can they capitalize on those mistakes to help them, you know, get in the win column?
Well, I think what Dakota needs to do, one, is they need to protect the ball. Obviously, when you turn the ball over going into the end zone, that's not very cohesive to getting points on the board. You know, another one was when they turned the ball over on downs. inside the 5-yard line, those were 2 opportunities that Dakota had to put points on the board. Now, granted, things happen, all right? I mean, with Clark diving into the end zone, he got hit just right. That ball popped out. I mean, it flew back 3 yards before somebody landed on it. Those are just some of those things that just happen in the course of the game. But, you know, there's many different things that you can do. You know, tuck it away a little bit more, dive forward. I don't know. I felt that he was awfully close to getting that in there. But if you would have just taken, instead of having the ball up here per se, you know, just reach it out. It's hard, though, because you're in the moment of that game.
Well,
so
you're usually in motion.
Yeah. So I don't blame him on that, obviously. It's just one of those, that was a football play made at the wrong time for Dakota's sake. But, you know, turning the ball over on downs inside the 5, you have to do something offensively to get going to make that happen. And what happened is, you know, Dakota was moving the ball with the little out passes and little crossing routes, and then they were getting some outside runs done, but once they got inside the 5, it's like everything shut down. They wanted to try to run the ball up the gut 4 times in a row or 3 times in a row and then try to run it outside, and at that time, Forreston was selling out on the blitz. I mean, they literally had all 4 backers blitzing every single play, it seemed, where you fake that dive, you drop back, you let Clark find his receiver over the top, and now you have something happen. And I know that they had that opportunity there too. I think it was to Rocky, and then Forreston got in front of the pass there and knocked it down. You know, it's just one of those things where Dakota's just got to clean up some things. I don't think they're in trouble by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I didn't have them picked to win that game anyway, and I still have Dakota picked to go pretty far this year as far as record-wise. So it's just one of those things that they just got to clean up. On West Carroll's side of things, you know, I don't really know what West Carroll had going, but it looked like Derek Tracy was pretty much the key recipient in that game. I know West Carroll did have a couple turnovers there that they need to clean up as well. So with Tracy, you know, having some big plays, you know, I know he threw about 50% in the game. So obviously there's some factors there that West Carroll probably needs to clean up, get a little bit more effective in their offense, obviously reduce the amount of turnovers that they had as well. But, you know, it speaks volumes on where Galena's at, too. I mean, last year Galena did beat West Carroll, so West Carroll avenged that loss. But both of them finished 2-7 and 3-6, respectively. So is it just a repeat of what's happened last year? The West Carroll-Galena game really didn't give us any answers as to where both these teams are at this year. Although you can see both teams, at least in the preseason, as teams that were starting to come on the rise, especially West Carroll, more so than anything. And Galena, too. I mean, with Henry Anderson, you know, you got a quarterback there, it's senior, and you got a bunch of skilled position guys there, seniors. But, you know, what did West Carroll do right in that game? What can they clean up? I expect this to be a hard-hitting game. I mean, West Carroll's not a very big team, per se, but neither is Dakota this year either. And both of them are going to rely on speed and strength. And I think this game's going to be a very hard-hitting game. But I like Dakota in this matchup still, nonetheless.
I also like the Indians.
All right, we're heading to Lanark, where the EPC Wildcats are going to play host to the Du-Pec Rivermen. Du-Pec comes in with that 1-0 record after they beat Amboy last week 58-7, where EPC comes in with an 0-1 record after they lost to Lena Winslow 50-6. Last year, EPC won this game in week 3, 36-0. But this is a game I have a lot of intrigue with. You know, how good is Du-Pec? I mean, obviously they turned around 69 points on Amboy just from a season ago, where EPC went from beating Lena Winslow by 6 points to losing by a running clock this year. Which really, with the amount of talent that EPC lost, doesn't surprise me, because it's not that EPC still doesn't have talent. It's just that their talent that they have isn't used to playing varsity level football yet. And when you go to take on one of the top teams in the state right out of the gates, things are going to happen. And I'll be quite frank here, but EPC had a gift-wrapped state ranking to start off the year, in my opinion, simply due to the fact of where they finished last year. And, you know, EPC has the tendency of being one of the top teams in a power conference. But there's a lot of questions to ask of EPC. Here's another team, though, I don't necessarily think is in trouble yet, but they obviously have some things that they need to work out in order to move forward.
Well, do you want to get into those things?
Sure, but I don't know, you know, exactly what all they did wrong. You know, we weren't at the Lena Winslow EPC game. I mean, obviously you can take a look at the stats to see, you know, they could not stop the running game of Lena Winslow. I mean, Ormiston went off on them, you know, 13 carries for 161 yards. I mean, that's a walk in the park for him. You know, Isaiah had a couple big plays. Obviously, you know, with Luke Benson getting some big throws in there, especially to Cade Crispin, and throwing for 3 touchdowns, and Lena Winslow throwing for 130 yards. That's like an anomaly in itself, you know, because Rick likes to run the ball. But, when, you know, we saw this a couple years ago when Lena Winslow had Ty Crispin at quarterback. They didn't throw often, but when they did, they were very effective with it. And I feel that's what Lena Winslow is going to do this year with Benson at quarterback. But, you know, just looking at everything, I don't know if EPC did much right. I mean, we know that they have a strong line, but your strong line can only go so far when you don't have your running backs out. You have to have new kids in the backfield that, like we stated already, they just have not seen varsity level success, and you're going up against a team with 2 Division I recruits on it. That's a little intimidating in its own right there. Du-Pec, though, you know, Hunter Hoffman looked really good in his game with Amboy, but there again, you know, they benefited on a couple things. You know, they had a kick return for a touchdown by Gabe Owens. Gabe Howard, sorry. Then they had a couple other big plays, you know. But they really spread things out, and they ran the ball, they threw the ball, so that, I mean, they were very dimensional as far as run pass. But you take a look at Amboy, and Amboy's got 24 kids out. They don't have a lot of size this year. So was that Du-Pec just finally rising to where they're supposed to be, or is it more so because Amboy's just not where they were a year ago? And that's why I find this game to be very interesting, because this will be Du-Pec's first test to say, hey, we can play with the top teams in the NUIC.
Who you got?
Gosh, you had to do this to me.
Well, you were going to either do it to me, so I had to beat you to the punch.
There you go. I like EPC.
I like Du-Pec.
Ooh. East Dubuque at Milledgeville. East Dubuque enters this game 1-0, while Milledgeville enters the game 0-1. Last week, East Dubuque won 26-0 over AFC, where Milledgeville lost 26-8 to Stockton. The last time these two teams played was back in Week 8 in 2014, where East Dubuque won that game 55-12. Obviously, they'll have no significance to this game because it was 5 years ago. But, you know, not a whole lot. You know, East Dubuque lost a lot. Milledgeville lost a lot. But when you take a look at, you know, what East Dubuque and Milledgeville are, you know, I just see two teams that have a lot of athleticism. One has some size and the other one has no size. So it's going to come down to who can fire off the ball the quickest, who can obviously move things the quickest. And right now, you know, the Warriors played AFC, and no offense to AFC, but AFC has 18, 19, 20 kids out, something like that. They don't have a whole lot out. They're coming off an 0-9 record. East Dubuque's coming off a 3-6 record. But East Dubuque was also able to play with some teams last year. They didn't win, but they were able to put some points up on some teams. Milledgeville obviously lost everybody off of their undefeated conference champion team. And this game's going to be tough. You know, you take a look at what Milledgeville and Stockton did, and you see the stats that Stockton had. It really looks like Stockton left a lot out on the field where they could have ran the score up even higher than they did. And I mean, give credit to Milledgeville. I mean, they were able to get a touchdown late in the game, but, you know, to hold Stockton at 26 points when they're probably the superior opponent in that matchup just tells you exactly what we had said about Milledgeville in our preseason. You know, they're probably not going to they're not going to be as good as they were last year, but they're still going to compete. And that's ultimately what you got to look at. How hard are you going to compete? Doesn't always matter about the wins and losses, but how are you going to build yourself for the next game and the next game after that? Ultimately, where are you going to guide yourself? I mean, every week somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose, right? East Dubuque, they have some skilled guys. They have a bigger line this year, and you know, 26-0 over AFC isn't really eye-popping to me, considering that generally when you are talking about a team that's going to compete for the playoffs or the upper echelon, that's more like 48-56 to nothing. But it also means that, you know, AFC might just be a little bit better this year as well, and you know they have a lot of experience returning with a lot of
the key position.
Right. So it's hard to judge this game, but I like East Dubuque in this game just for the fact that they have a little bit more size. Granted, they're going on the road. Milledgeville's not always an easy place to win, but I like the Warriors.
I'm gonna differentiate myself from you again. And I'm going to go with the Missiles because I think that after that loss to Stockton, they're going to be hungry for a win.
Ooh, I like that. Maybe they can get the chance to ring the victory bell at Floyd Dobb Field.
There you go.
All right. So we head down to Forreston, home of the defending state champs, where they'll play host for the first time this year against the Galena Pirates. Galena comes in with an 0-1 record. Forreston comes in with a 1-0 record. Obviously, Galena lost last week to West Carroll 22-20, where Forreston beat Dakota in our game of the week 30-12. She lost her pen. Anyway, last year in this game, Forreston won in week 7. 52-7, and since 2016, and there goes mine. Anyway, the Cardinals have owned the Pirates for pretty much the last 3 seasons now. I don't expect a whole lot to change here. When you look at this game on paper, it just screams Forreston, Forreston, Forreston.
I would definitely agree with that. And I know we brought this up in the Dakota segment. The game Friday night, we both went to, obviously. It was very sloppy for both sides. Forreston ended up having 4 turnovers for the game. How can they fix that and
well,
into this game?
Well, I mean, you take a look at some of the turnovers that they had. You know, one was, I believe one of them was a pitch to the right, and the pitch just didn't make it correctly. So, you know, you got to clean that up. You got to make sure if you're going to pitch the ball, that you make the right pitches. Another one was on a breakaway run. You know, I believe it was Christensen actually, which surprised me. But you know, he got hit from behind, and I think he thought he was on his way to the end zone, which so did I. And he got caught. And I think when he got caught, the hand of the defender hit the ball just right, and it popped it out. And really, it's just, you know, make sure you're taking care of the ball. I mean, you know, I think there was one, and I can't remember correctly. I'm trying to recap the game in my mind on where all the fumbles occurred, but
That photographic memory isn't working out for you.
no, not so much this morning.
Okay.
But you know, it's just one of those things where you just got to take care of the ball. I mean, if Forreston had taken care of the ball a little bit better, would Dakota have had the opportunities that they had that they too could not capitalize on? Obviously, Forreston to me looked very much the stronger team in that game. But overall, I mean, that was a pretty hard-hitting game,
Oh, yeah,
too.
it was.
And, you know, I was excited for that aspect of it. Was it sloppy? Yeah. But you tend to get sloppy games in the first week of the season, specifically when you're playing top 10 opponents against each other. You know, there's just a little bit more of the barometer level up here because people are just, they're more amped up and they're more focused, but at the same time they're more anxious and nervous. And, you know, those aspects play a derivative in the game and in the mindset until you get out on the field and those hits start coming.
Well, let me tell you, someone who came in focused, not someone, people that came in focused to do their job, and they did their job, was the Forreston offensive line. Those holes, they were great.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that Forreston doesn't have much of a problem with their offensive line. They looked really well against Dakota. I mean, in typical Forreston fashion, you know, both offensive and defensive lines just stayed low, fired off the ball. You know, you take a look at, you know, hard running. I mean, there was one time where I saw Christensen running with the ball, and he's dragging 5 guys with him. You know, you could say that's one of two things. Either Christensen's running that hard, which he was, or it was bad tackling on Dakota's part because there was nobody grabbing at his legs. I mean, anybody can keep running if you're not grabbing their legs. I mean, you got to, whole part of football is take out the legs, take them to the ground. Well, if you don't take out the legs, how are you going to get them to the ground unless you're bigger and stronger? Well, Christensen is a strong dude. So, you know, with Dom being able to run the ball that hard, obviously Ethan Mulder was very good at running the ball. Austin Mitchell had a couple big runs for the Cards, and then Jordan Neuschwander as well. You know, they just have a very solid team. And, you know, the one thing that I really enjoyed watching was Bailey Culler just command the offense at the quarterback position. He did a great job with all the play fakes, all the reads, you know, and it's just systematic of what the Forreston offense is. I mean, when you're on the sidelines, you know where the play's going. The problem is especially when they run the double dives, you don't know if the ball's going to the first back, if it's going to the second back. When they run the fullback dive up the middle, they look like they're going to be going to the outside off tackle, but it's just the ball placement, and Culler sold those fakes all night long. I mean, he did an exceptional job commanding that offense, and it really made the machine of what Forreston is just move effortlessly. Now, granted, they did have a couple issues here and there, but, you know, chalk that up to Dakota having a pretty good defense as well. I mean, I felt that Dakota's defense improved over where they were last year even. I mean, they just looked a lot quicker to the ball, attacking the ball. Their pass defense was much more effective. Granted, you know, Forreston only passed the ball one time. It did end up with a touchdown. But I just felt that the level of the play of the defensive backfield in general for Dakota was much better. It's just, you know, Forreston owned, like you said, they own the offensive and defensive lines. And in a game like that, that's what you need. I mean, Clark had nowhere to go when he would drop back to pass. Forreston was right there. And the few times that they were able to pass, you know, how many times did Clark get flushed out of the pocket? I mean, Clark was running for his life a lot. And that's because Forreston was attacking the ball.
They were there.
So, yeah, Forreston looked every bit the part. I mean, and I would, I don't want to sell Dakota down either. I mean, I thought Dakota did some things that were really good for what they are. They just need to clean up a few things. Galena, on the other hand, they just need to know how to finish off a ball game. Obviously, they were up 20-6. No, 20-8. They were up 20-8 after they came out down 8-6 at halftime. And, they were able to take control of what West Carroll was doing. And then in the fourth quarter, it just went West Carroll's way. West Carroll had a 53-yard pass from Tracy to, I can't remember who it was now. Anyway, they scored on a big pass play. They eventually end up getting a safety on Galena with 4 minutes left in the game, somewhere around there. And it was 20-16 at that point. Well, West Carroll got the ball back, and within 2 minutes, they were in the end zone again, and that's where the finishing touches of that game came into play. So, obviously Galena did not play very well when things got tough. They did fine when they were in control. When things started to get tough, they couldn't overcome that. And that's where Galena needs to improve if they want to get back up to where Galena football once was, should be, what we all feel where they should be. But, going into Forreston, it's going to be tough for them. And I personally, I like the Cardinals in a big way here.
I agree with you there.
Lena Winslow at Amboy. Man. Last year, this was a pretty interesting game. As Amboy put up 37 points, and we're hanging on before Lena Winslow really started to pull away. But this year, Lena Winslow comes in with a 1-0 record. Amboy comes in with an 0-1 record. Obviously, Lena Winslow had the big win over EPC 50-6, where Amboy lost in a big fashion in Du-Pec 58-7. I don't know if Amboy's going to have anything to offset what Lena Winslow does here. I think this is going to be one of those games where
the second, third, and fourth string of Lena Winslow sees a lot of playing time.
Yes.
Sorry.
I do. And, Lena Winslow's, their starters aren't going to have a lot of playing time in this game, unfortunately. And you want to be able to see those starters get that playing time so they can start to build that cohesiveness up. Unfortunately, Lena Winslow's got a fairly...
Well, I mean, they've got East Dubuque next week, and then they're following it up with Dakota, which could be, I think that would be a matchup, obviously.
Could be. I don't know how much it will be. But, you're right.
Stockton,
the big one really for Lena Winslow right now is Week 7
with Forreston,
which is, honestly, that's going to be our NUIC game of the year. Rightfully so. I mean, the two have met in the semifinals each of the last 2 years, and they've met in the playoffs each of the last 3 years, and the winner of that game always goes on to win state, at least in the last 3 years. So, obviously, a lot of people have Week 7 marked with Lena Winslow going to Forreston, but that's 6 weeks away yet.
It will fly, watch.
It will fly. You're right.
Be like, oh, hey, remember Week 2 when we talked about that?
Yes. Amboy's got to figure some things out. Obviously, the loss of Mitchell McLaughlin at quarterback has hurt them. Not sure what they're going to do quarterback-wise. They got a lot of things. And it's sad to say this because Amboy's always had the athletes. I mean, ever since we first saw them play in the NUIC, you could just tell. I mean, they were a big team. They had the right athletes. What is going wrong with them that they cannot get the wins that they were getting when they were in the Three Rivers Conference? Why all of a sudden did that drop off as soon as they changed into the NUIC? Because it ain't because they came out of the Three Rivers Conference and the NUIC is just that much better than the Three Rivers. That's not the case. I mean, I would say both conferences are extremely tough. I don't know what's going on, why Amboy's fallen off the way they have. But, you know, I know that low numbers is not easy. I mean, when you only got 24, 25 kids going out in your entire program, that makes it extremely tough, especially when you're Amboy, you're a 2A school. Well, Amboy's a 1A school, but when you add in Lemoyne, Ohio, you're a 2A school. And so you got to grab the kids that you can get and make sure and have them go out for football, and then you got to try and gel them all together.
Well, not only that, you know, do you have fresh legs, you know, playing both sides?
Right. And you know, Lena Wenslow's carrying like 48 to 50 kids on their roster, so like you said, I mean, they're going to be able to get in there and get some things done. I mean, when you think of the big teams in our area, Lena Winslow and Forreston, and even, you know, over the past few years, Stockton, where they're carrying 50-some kids per team, you know, and it reminds you of like a Moreau Forsyth, who has 76 kids, and then you wonder why they're going to state every year. Because they're able to develop all that talent with all that kids that are going out for football. Unfortunately for Amboy, they don't have that, at least not right now. And Coach Jones has a lot to work with, or not a lot to work with, so he's got to make the best of what he has to work with. Unfortunately, playing Lena Winslow, I like the Panthers. Orangeville at AFC. Orangeville comes in this game with an 0-1 record, and AFC comes in with the same. Last week, Orangeville lost to Aquin 28-16, and AFC lost to East Dubuque 26-0. Last year, these two teams played in Week 4, where Orangeville won 56-0. You know, Orangeville comes in this game, obviously on paper, as the big favorites. Coming off of back-to-back playoff appearances. Granted, both of them ended in first-round losses, but nonetheless, they had the talent to get to the playoffs. Here again, Orangeville has a team that has the ability to get to the playoffs, but, you know, getting that loss right out of the start, you know,
the gates.
Yeah, it doesn't sit well, especially when you take a look at, you know, Galena played with AFC, and I mean, I think that'll be a good matchup for Galena. Or not AFC. Galena played with West Carroll, my bad. That's still going to be a good, I think that'll be a tough matchup, or a good matchup for Orangeville. Obviously, Du-Pec's rise. East Dubuque, obviously, East Dubuque hasn't really played anybody yet, but, I mean, they played AFC, so I don't want to say they didn't play anybody, but they have not played the upper echelon of the conference to see where they're at. And then you got Lena Winslow, Stockton, Dakota before you end the season with Milledgeville. So Orangeville's, this loss to Aquin does not hurt them. You know, it's one of those games, it was a big game. You really want to get going out of the gates. But Orangeville has a formidable team this year. They have a lot of good sides. I mean, I had one area coach just tell me yesterday, you know, Kleckler and Rodeball were the two best kids on the field. You know,
Well,
that speaks a lot.
Exactly. I was only able to listen to a small clip of the game since I was busy, but I mean, it was Rhodey the whole time. Like the whole time that I listened, you know, he was jumping and hurdling people, and sounded like he had a heyday.
Right. So,
but fortunately, it didn't seem to play out that way.
No. I mean, and obviously those two players were both phenomenal players the last 2 years, at least. This is their third year for sure. I mean, I know Garrett's been playing varsity since his freshman year due to the low numbers at Orangeville, but, you know, you take a look at, you know, what they have going on. They have the athletes there to make it happen. Obviously, on the other hand, AFC, again, we talked about it earlier, AFC has a lot returning, so they have a lot of experience. They have a new back that they acquired from a transfer. Parents moved down to Ashton. So, you know, they have the ability to make things happen. This kid is very athletic. But it's still trying to make everything come together for the Raiders. And, I mean, quite honestly, I think the Broncos are more geared to win this game. Like I said, I mean, when you look at this paper or this matchup on paper, I mean, it says Orangeville, and I believe that the Broncos are going to have their way with AFC in this game. If they don't, it'll speak more for AFC and probably speak less on Orangeville as well. But obviously, both teams need to come in, give their best efforts, and let the cards fall where they land. But I like the Broncos in this matchup.
I also like Orangeville in this matchup.
We move into our game of the week where the Aquin Bulldogs will play host to the Stockton Blackhawks. Stockton and Aquin both come in with 1-0 records. Obviously, Stockton beat Milledgeville last week 26-8, and as we just got done mentioning, Aquin beat Orangeville 28-16. Last year, Stockton won this game in Week 8, 20-6, but this has been a premier matchup for 3 of the last 4 years, including a second-round playoff game back in 2017 that saw Aquin win 21-14. But in that time, Stockton is 3-1. But Aquin, their one win was the most important one, and that was that playoff game in 2017. This year, you know, both teams are trying to get back to where they were. Stockton obviously is looking for their 9th straight trip to the playoffs. There's a 10th this year. It's a lot.
Well, hey, I mean, they just won their 600th holy cow, the 600th game.
They did. You beat me to the punch.
I did.
That's awesome. I like it. We'll touch back on that.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
I didn't mean to throw you off. Anyway,
you know, Aquin's looking to get back to the playoffs after missing last year. So, you know, you take a look. Almost lost it. You take a look at those things, and you know, this is always one of those games where you're like, man, what's going to happen now? However, you know, Stockton's got a couple key players, or at least a key player that's out right now, so that might, you know, have a little bit of problem for them there. And Aquin is, you know, Aquin going into Orangeville and playing the Broncos the way that they did and really exposing what they can do. I mean, you take a look at Gustafson. I mean, we're always talking about Will Gus, but he had another big performance. 253 total yards of offense, 4 total touchdowns, 3 passing, 1 rushing. And then even on the defensive side of the ball, he comes out with 10 tackles. One thing that Aquin obviously is very good at is being able to run that spread type offense and run the ball out of that spread offense, along with being able to throw the ball out of it. I think they have a team too where they could easily go into a wing type or I type formation and be able to run the ball that way as well. They have a good set of linemen that are big, they're strong, they're fast, and they finally have that team that may be able to compete with those upper teams. Obviously, they still have a lot of things to work on. You know, playing Orangeville to a 2-score win is not bad. Obviously, they were up 3 scores at one point in time. Not once, but twice. But if they want to get to the level of play that Alina Winslow or Forreston are at, they're going to have to be able to do more things to get to that level yet. They're just not there quite yet. Stockton, on the other hand, obviously you take a look at some of the things they've done. They've lost Dvorak, but now they have Hilly, and they have Jason Herman back, along with Tyler Barch, but you know, we'll see when Barch gets back into the lineup. Unfortunately, he's out right now. But, you know, they have the options to be able to do multiple things as well. They're not just so much of a one-man band like they were the year before. But, you know, when I break this game down, I feel Aquin is at that level now where they're going to win this game with some fashion.
You know what's funny is I went back and forth, but I think I have to agree with you. I think I'm going to have to go with that.
There you go.
Well, Kyle, I don't know about you. This is usually my favorite segment of the whole show is our player of the week.
Yes, and I would like to give a big shout out to Eric White of Benchwarmers for dropping in and being our sponsor this year for our Benchwarmers Player of the Week. So with that, we'll get right down to who the winners were. Our Player of the Week in the North is going to be Lena Winslow quarterback Luke Benson. Benson went 4 for 5 passing against EPC for 130 yards and 3 touchdowns. And on the south side of the conference, it's going to be Aquin quarterback William Gustafson, as Gustafson had 253 total yards of offense with 3 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown for 4 total and 10 tackles. So congratulations on your performance there. Eric has agreed to allow each winner an extra large pizza along with 12 wings. So all you have to do as the winner of our Benchwarmers Player of the Week is receive your awards at Benchwarmers, where they will have it ready. Eric already knows who the winners are, as I've already told him who is going there, and we'll continue to do this every week, obviously, throughout the remainder of the football season. So, huge thank you once again to Eric White for reaching out to us to be able to do this and provide each of our Player of the Week nominees and winners with the awards and prizes that they can enjoy with their families.
Hey, did you know your buddy Will Gus was our Player of the Week 1 last year?
No, I did not until you said something. So that is...
You mean I had a stat on you?
You did.
You saw it here first, folks.
You did. So congratulations, Will. Obviously, you've been our Week 1 Player of the Week 2 years in a row now. So keep up the good work, man. All right, we move into our NUIC Power 5. We had our preseason Power 5, but we didn't really do it on video since it was the preseason. After Week 1, our Power 5 has already taken a little bit of a turn, so we'll go through what we have there. Obviously, at number 1 is still the Lena Winslow Panthers with their convincing win over EPC 50-6. Coming in at number 2 are the Forreston Cardinals, who beat the 8th-ranked Dakota Indians 30-12. Obviously, Forreston is ranked number 1 in state. Coming in at number 3 is still going to be Dakota, despite the loss. It was to number 1 ranked Forreston. Obviously, Dakota had some things that they left on the field that they probably wish they wouldn't have left on the field. Had they converted, they could have probably closed that gap a little bit more. At number 4, and moving their way up the list, are the Aquin Bulldogs after they beat Orangeville 28-16. And new to our list this year, and for the first time ever in our NUIC Power 5, are the Du-Pec Rivermen. The Rivermen won in convincing fashion 58-7, turning around a 69-point swing from last year to this year on the Amboy Clippers. So Du-Pec rounds out our Power 5 for Week 1. So as we move into Week 2, obviously there's some big games across the state as well, not just the NUIC. Teams to watch out for, obviously, Tuscola beat Villa Grove 55-14. Aurora Christian had a big win over Roosevelt in Gary, Indiana, 63-0. Camp Point Central, who lost to Forreston in the state championship game last year, won 20-6 over Greenfield Northwestern. Athens took a loss to the number 4 ranked team in Class 3A, Williamsville, 27-12. Arcola won big over Argenta Oriana, who was in the state semifinals just a year ago, 43-6. And then Chicago Hope is another team to really watch out for in 1A. They lost 15-14 to Sandwich, who is a 3A, 4A bubble team. I can't remember exactly what the cutoff is. I know their enrollment's like 698, so I think they're more of a 3A school, but obviously they lost that game by just a point. Another big game is Anawan-Wethersfield with their big win over Carthage-Illini West 52-22 as well.
And I see our friends down at Ottawa Marquette, team we seem to see year after year up here, they ended up getting a win over Dwight 40-14.
Yeah, a lot of people thought that game was going to be closer than it was, and Marquette took full control of that game. So I think Marquette's going to somewhat be a sleeper this year. People are used to them now over the last couple of years being ranked. This year they're not as highly publicized, but I think they're going to be just as formidable. On the other side, in Class 2A, obviously the two-time defending state champs, the GCMS Falcons, improved to a now school record 29th straight win after beating Paxton Buckley Lode at 32-8. Maroa Forsyth beat Verdon North Mac 26-18. Newman coming up big against Spring Valley Hall 20-6. St. Teresa beat Downs Tri-Valley, which Tri-Valley was ranked as well, 41-0. Yeah, Clifton Central with the big win over Georgetown. Ridge Farm is expected 41-18. Minonk Fieldcrest beat Reed Custer 47-7. Orion squeaking out a 2-point win over Monmouth Roseville 20-18. And then Pana with a big win over Stockton 44-7. Some other notable games to watch down there as well. Breeze Made or Die is dropping down to Class 2A this year. They lost by 4 points to Effingham, 32-28. And then Rockford Lutheran coming up with a big win. They're dropping down to 2A this year. They beat Oregon, 43-15. And then in bigger news, this is going to get everybody's boat rolling. Belleville-Althoff Catholic is moving down to 2A this year. They're on a waiver. They lost to number 1 ranked in Class 4A Immaculate Conception, 52-7. So, Althoff obviously did not make the playoffs last year, but if they were to make the playoffs this year, they will be in 2A, so it's still going to be an interesting storyline to see what they have. Granted, they have to get to at least 5 wins in order to get into the playoffs, so we'll see what happens there. Another big notable is Rockridge with their 37-30 win over Sherrard as well. So that pretty much gives you a look at where the teams to watch for both Class 1A and Class 2A were as far as what they did this past week. Alright, so we get ready to go into Week 2. Obviously, touching back on what we said earlier in the film, Stockton reaching their 600th win in school history. Congratulations to Coach Snyder, his staff, his players, all former players and coaches of the past. It's quite the accomplishment. Stockton obviously becoming the first team in NUIC history to reach that plateau of 600 career wins. So excellent job with that. Huge milestone win there. As we move forward into Week 2, obviously we have some good games, interesting games to watch out for. Dakota at West Carroll, Du-Pec at EPC is really going to be those games that are going to intrigue the mind, per se. East Dubuque at Milledgeville should be another good one. And of course, our big one, the game of the week, Stockton at Aquin, is going to really be one that people will want to see. So, a lot of good stuff going on going into Week 2. Obviously, this is the last week of full crossover schedule. From here moving forward, conference play will start to open up, with the exception of Stockton and AFC, who will finish off their crossover schedule next week. But then every week thereafter, well, starting next week in Week 3, you're only going to have one crossover game per week as we open up the conference schedule. So that'll be a lot of fun. A lot of people are getting excited, especially with the new rivalries being brought back together. It's really exciting.
Wouldn't it be reviving old rivalries?
Yes, it is reviving old rivalries, but in the same fashion. You can say
okay, you're
old.
deep. Anyway.
Anyway,
I'm going to be at Aquin this week. Where are you going to be? Oh, I guess you're driving. We're going to be in Aquin this week for the Blackhawks and the Bulldogs. I'm really excited to see that. Like you said, I think that's going to be a great matchup. And
I do too. I'm excited to see that game. Really interested to see what Aquin has this year. Really excited to see what Stockton is going to do differently now that they have more weapons per se and what they can do as well. So really excited for that game nonetheless. So get out to a game. If you're not tied to a team, you might want to check out Freeport. If you're closer to Savannah, go down there, check out Dakota, West Carroll. But or even the Du-Pec EPC game. Those are probably our 3 big slated games for the week. As you know, just a lot of things to ponder and a lot of answers to be or questions to be answered. Sorry, I'm talking backwards again. I know. Anyway, as always, root for the NUIC.
high five for the Power 5.
High five for the Power 5.